Hello and welcome to the Freedom Packaging Podcast. And I got Tom with me, the president of Freedom Packaging. How are you?
I'm doing well. A little early this morning, so a little groggy.
Yeah. You know, that's the best thing about getting caffeine in early in the morning is skyrockets us to everything we need to get. This is our first time doing this podcast, and I know we're excited to be here. And a lot of dreams are coming to fruition a little bit on this, and I know you talked about this when we first started working together on it, and here we are.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. I think it gives us the opportunity to talk about some things that we're really passionate about, and I think we're blessed to be in an industry where hopefully with this podcast and what we do at Freedom Packaging, we can make some positive changes for the planet. So I'm really pumped about the podcast, and I hope it works out. We should maybe throw some disclaimers out there, right?
Yeah. Hit them home run right now.
All right, so disclaimer number one, this is podcast number one of the Packaging Experience podcast, a little pep talk, right?
Yep.
So it's probably going to be rough around the edges, so forgive us on that. And disclaimer number two, Jeff and I, we're passionate, but we're not packaging engineers or recycling or plastics experts, chemists, or anything like that. All of the knowledge that we have has been gained from experience in the industry, but I am sure I'm going to misstep and say some wrong things, so please feel free to contact us or write in the comments and say, Tom, you have no idea what you're talking about. It'll probably mostly be my wife in there saying that, if I had to guess, because she's always right.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
But I am not, so that's the disclaimer, is this is our first run, so it might be a little rough, and number two is I have no problem having discourse, and if I've misstepped or said something wrong, or if you have, please let us know. We don't have a lot of pride or ego in that regard.
I think that's a huge step in kind of going forward with the podcast, is being open to just criticism, you know, and what we did wrong. I feel like that's just a great best way to get better in things, you know, because I take that, I enjoy criticism, and I don't necessarily think it's criticism. I think it's just more constructive criticism, you know, and that's what I enjoy getting it from you is, you know, it's only going to help me make myself better throughout the day. And that's what, you know, Tom here is talking about is as we go through this podcast, constructive criticism is like the gateway to us getting better and helping you and helping us, or help us educate you guys. So, well, let's dive into it then. And I kind of want to talk about you a little bit, you know. Our followers and our people watching this are going to want to know who you are, where you come from, and I think diving into that a little bit will give them some insight on that. So
yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for that. Maybe we'll start with Freedom. What is Freedom Packaging for people that don't know, and then I'll go a little bit in my involvement, right? Freedom Packaging is a company, and we manufacture and supply flexible packaging for the frozen fruits and vegetable market. A lot of our customers are either growers or just co-packers, and typically they're packing for major retail brands or food service. So lots of private label, great value for Walmart, Season's Choice for Aldi, stuff like that on the private label side. And then food service, you know, Monarch for US Foods. So that's a lot of involvement in what we do. So we put a lot of plastic out there, and that's kind of the whole point of this podcast is how do we get that plastic back into the stream and outside of the ocean, you know, and we can kind of go into that in a second. So I'm president of Freedom Packaging. I have been for the last year and a half. It's been great.
Very thankful that you're a part of this, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So what my experience is, I started a labels and packaging division in my old company that I worked for 20 years, and we were hyper focused on sustainable solutions then, both in compostable and in recyclable solutions. So all of that, again, is kind of driven by my passion and your passion as well, which is awesome, around the oceans, right? Yeah. So growing up in Florida, I still live in Florida. I split time between Florida and California, two great states to really take advantage of salt water.
Yeah.
So just growing up wakeboarding, fishing, diving, spearfishing, all of that type of stuff, you know, every time I go down diving, I have a bag for trash and a stringer for fish. And There's been multiple times where my stringer for fish is empty, but I've never gone diving and not had a bag full of trash on the other side, and that drives me nuts.
I'm sure it does. Yeah, especially when you're going down there for strictly fishing, and you end up coming around things that are killing them in ways that an animal shouldn't be, indulging in, or swallowing, or just coming across, and you start to see that more and more nowadays. And what you're talking about is absolutely true. It's extremely a huge letdown, and our side things, and how we can get better at reducing that amount that's in the ocean. And that's a huge point. I don't want to see that. I would rather see you come back with a huge fish or huge mahi, and not, a bunch of trash. And that's kind of why we're here today. And that's great. And that kind of leads us up to our topic for today, and how the consumer should recycle poly. And I kind of wanted to get your insight on that and kind of break that down for us, and even for the individual that's watching this that doesn't necessarily know what poly is or how they should recycle. I think that's a good way to get started, is how the consumer should recycle poly.
Yeah, so where low density polyethylene gets tricky is people don't really know what to do because it doesn't go in the blue bin, right? Yeah. So typically in the United States, you have your trash bin, and then you have your multi recycle blue bin that you can throw all types of different things in, papers, plastics, stuff like that. So you really have to be cognizant of what's supposed to go in there and what isn't. Yeah. So there is a organization called the Sustainable Packaging Coalition, the SPC, and they look at different bags that are made of pure polyethylene. And if they're suitable, then they get a little logo that says store drop off with a black recyclable Mobius.
Yeah.
But that relies on the consumer to bring it back to the store. So that's really what we're talking about today. We're not talking about high density polyethylene like your milk jugs that you just throw in there, or aluminum cans or glass or paper. Everybody knows where that goes for the most part.
Yeah.
But it's important not to put low density polyethylene into that blue bin. And you see this all the time. So number one, let's keep polyethylene out, low density polyethylene, I should be clear, out of the blue bin, because you'll see people when they're at a party or they're on the boat and they have a recyclable trash bag or a recycle bag, and they're throwing all their beer cans in there, and then they throw that whole bag into the blue bin.
Oh yeah.
So that's a big issue, because that low density polyethylene, I should mention, trash bags are made out of low density polyethylene. That shouldn't go in there. It gets caught in the conveyor belts at the recycle center. It just throws everything off. So please, if you're using your blue bin, no trash bags in there.
Yeah.
All right. So that just makes it easier for them to recycle everything else. Now, the second thing is, what do we do with the low density polyethylene? And hold on, I got to check my sources, but I'm pretty sure that's number 4, LDPE, Mobius.
And that's a great point too, is like, you see a lot of people putting trash bags in the blue bin, and that's kind of something that, is, you just don't want to do it all. So, but anyways, go ahead. I think you found it, right?
Yeah. So low density polyethylene, if you're looking on packaging, is a number 4 with the recycle around it. High density polyethylene is a number 2, and you'll see that on your milk jugs. And I just found this out in Canada. They don't even have milk jugs. They do milk bags.
Oh, that's right.
I did not know about.
Yeah, I remember this conversation.
I just haven't purchased a ton of milk in Canada yet, so I'm waiting for that opportunity.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like 6th grade, whenever you would poke a hole in your milk bag with your straw. And yeah, that was, I used to hate poking my straw in there because I'd always end up on the other side and I have a hole in my milk bag, and all I wanted was chocolate milk. And, and I'm sitting there drinking it, and I'm like, man, why am I not getting nothing but my bag's draining? And then I go to look in my lap, and of course I got chocolate milk all over. So
yeah,
lesson learned, right, guys? So, but yeah, that's a great point. And I really liked how you were talking about not adding again. I want to emphasize this again, is not putting a trash bag inside the recycle thing. I see it everywhere, and it kind of makes you think, like, do you really know how to recycle? So great points on that. And yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So
yeah, and if we back up on recycling and how it gets done, there's a responsibility of the brand owners to put something into the market that has the ability to go into that. And then there's a responsibility of the consumer to make sure that product gets back in there. And the more we can educate about that, or the more that we can make that easier, the better our circular economy of recycling is going to be. So
For
step
sure.
one, right? No low density polyethylene, which are trash bags, in the blue bin. Step two, once you get low density polyethylene, which could be grocery bags, obviously trash bags, which we discussed, outer wraps for multiple packages of bottles of water or something like that, make sure it has that number 4 on there.
Yeah.
And then what I like to do is create my own little recycle triangle in my garage, right? So I'll have my
That's so cool.
standard trash can on the left, my recycle bin on the right, and then I hang a hook for a trash bag up top. So now I'm making that cool recycle pyramid, and then anything that's labeled number 4 on it, I'm putting into that trash bag. It is store drop off, so this is not something you're going to be able to put curbside, but look for those places that take polyethylene that you can take store drop off. In Florida, for example, Publix, Wawa, a lot of grocery stores do that. I'm not really sure about California because I think they banned grocery bags, or they at least charge you for grocery bags out here. But I'm assuming there's places that, I don't know if Safeway or Whole Foods has
There
that.
is, there's a way for you to bring them back where they just reusable. Say, hey, these were, they're clean. There's nothing used in them or spilled inside of them. There's none of that stuff. But majority of the time, they don't really ask that. That's just kind of where my knowledge is at, is like to kind of help them assist it. But yeah, there's a spot where you take it and everything else, because I don't want to give anything back to them that I spilled milk in, or I don't know. It's just the way that I think. I guess I'm trying to be respectful here, but. They definitely do. So
Awesome. So that's really it. So the next time you go to the grocery store and you see that trash bag is like blown up and ready, like can't fit any more low density polyethylene in it, you just throw it in your car, you bring it to the grocery store, and right before you go shopping, you push it in there. Interesting point though that I felt really stupid about is that like the store drop off at Publix has like a little mail slot, like assuming you're only bringing 1 or 2 bags at a time, and I've got this monster trash bag and I'm like trying to jam it in there.
A workout in itself.
Yeah, exactly. And then the guy comes behind me with his own bag and he just pulls off the top and drops it in. I'm like, wow.
My IQ is damaged, and ego.
Yeah,
for
that
sure.
was definitely
That's how it would hit me hard right now. Like just thinking of that right now, I'm like, man, I know I thought about that, but I guess not. But yeah, it hurt my ego a little bit. But
it was just the look that he gave me, like, what are you doing, dude? Like, sorry.
Yeah, it's like the face you get at a barbecue and the guy's burning your burgers, and you're like, no, I know you. So.
But it's taboo to touch another man's grill, so you just have to sit there and eat the burnt burger.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, bad luck for the most part, right? No, this is great stuff. I think this is kind of what the podcast is going to dive into as we get, continue going forward, and just teaching you guys about stuff that is important for, everyday living, recycling, how to take care of the planet. And, that's what Tom and I are here for. Now, again, we're not inherently specialists in the category, but we're here teaching you about the stuff that we know offhand, and Tom has had many, many years in this area, and I think this is very knowledgeable, and I go to him for my knowledge, and I think this is one of the best individuals to talk to about this type of stuff. And we're going to have experts on here in the future. We're going to have other people that we know personally, and then there's just, again, be a lot of great individuals coming on here and sharing their knowledge. And I think that's what this is going to be about. Is what we're excited to be here for. And this is just episode 1. This is just the beginning. So is there anything that you kind of wanted to dive into or share?
Yeah, so I guess the next question naturally I would ask after hearing what we've discussed so far is what happens with that low density polyethylene once it makes it into the stream. So a lot of times there's a company called Trex Decking, for example, and they're making like a wood synthetic base out of that, or building materials. So they're taking that polyethylene, low density, and they're putting it into building materials, so they are getting reused, or trash can bins, stuff like that. So that's great. Ideally for me, and we really need to start digging into this, is how do we get that low density polyethylene back into packaging so we really close the loop, right? If we currently have Freedom Packaging, we can do up to 25% PCR post-consumer resin, and then we can do another 25% post-industrial resin, and I'll break those down in a second. But That post-consumer resin right now is from the high density polyethylene of milk jugs. And it's nice and clean and easy to work, so we can move that back into food packaging in a safe way. However, I want to figure out how do we get the low density polyethylene back into the recycle stream, and maybe that's something somebody knows way more about than I do, but that's a dream of mine, is to close that loop, create demand for recycled low density polyethylene, put it in packaging, put it out there, create demand for it, so now we really have that cycle going. So we'll see if we can get that off the ground.
Yeah.
But it should be something that is feasible. I just don't know the chemistry about like the repelletizing of PCR. How contaminated is it? And just so everybody knows, when we are using post-consumer content, it's never the entire bag. And it creates some issues. Like the resin isn't perfect, as if what we call virgin resin or brand new resin. You get gels, there's imperfections, but I think with some education of the consumer, like, hey, this packaging isn't perfect, but it's the look of sustainability.
Yeah.
Right? The reason it doesn't look perfect is because we're taking care of the planet and trying to leave it in a better state than we found it.
Yeah.
Post-consumer resin, post-industrial resin, when we're extruding polyethylene, and let's say we're pulling it in two directions if we're biaxially oriented it, or just pulling it in machine direction, usually where it's gripping, that part isn't perfect, or we might have some defects or something like that, or just trim loss, all that stuff that's in the plant from virgin, but it never really made it out of the plant, we can repelletize that. That's post-industrial resin, which is darn near virgin resin. That you can do a lot of great things. With post-consumer resin, obviously it's had contents in it, it's been through whatever. Did the end user really clean it off as much? There's contamination there, stuff like that. Obviously tons of colors and contamination. But we could still use it up to 25%. So you could feasibly source 50% of your polyethylene to be 25% post-consumer, 25% post-industrial, and again, you're creating the demand on that side.
Yeah. And I kind of wanted to go over what you were just talking about. You said keeping it clean and stuff like that. Could you dive into that a little bit more for us?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of struggle with this one a little bit, because obviously you want to give the recycling place like as clean as possible, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever recycled a peanut butter jug?
Yep.
How hard is that to get clean?
Yeah, they don't have a dog on standby to lick that thing all
Exactly.
day. So
Exactly. And so it's like hot water, boiling water in there, and you're shaking it, trying to get all that peanut butter, but it sticks to the inside. So how much water are we using trying to clean off our recycling? Different subject to just kind of work through, like.
No, for sure.
And I don't know the answer to this, but like if all of your food came in like salsa, peanut butter, all those glass jars, plastic jars, if they came in dirty, what does that look like compared to if everybody brought it in clean? Like, what are the two ends of that spectrum, and how does it impact the plastic? I don't know.
It's still something like what you're saying. That's something to think about. You know, that's huge. Like, imagine all of us cleaning our glass jars, our salsa, our peanut butter, especially our peanut butter. I can only imagine what they have to go through to clean that out for them to just recycle it in general. That's crazy just to think about. It's a huge spectrum that none of us think about. We think, oh man, it's empty, throw it away, I'm gonna go buy another one.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the times maybe we should take a step back and see like, hey, how can I help? You know, and I think that's a lot of the things that we fail at in this world is we never really look at how we can help, you know, and that's the reason why we I think it's a good step forward to, you know, say, hey, how can I start doing this? How can I get better? How can I help the world? And I think that's a great idea. So it's crazy. But thank you for explaining that, because just putting that into someone's mindset or just question is huge. So
yeah, well, and the beautiful thing about polyethylene is it really is a clean stream compared to a lot of other types of plastics. Low density polyethylene, you buy a couch, it's wrapped in this big clear bag. That's low density polyethylene. I mean, there's just a lot of almost any single package or anything that you get out there that has just a big clear bag around it, it's probably clear polyethylene. So it's a nice stream as far as what it puts back into it is usually very usable. So that's great.
yeah,
But at the same time, what are we doing with it? Are we creating enough demand for that post-consumer resin? And again, my big passion is how do we get that post-consumer resin back into packaging and close that loop? And that's a question for another day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I mean, those are all great points, and I think that's very informative. And again, that's why I have you as the main host. You're here to talk about those important conversations, and that's why you wanted to be a part of the podcast, and that's why you wanted to create the podcast, and that's huge. And I kind of want to go off that a little bit, because I was kind of thinking, like, as like a company, how does a company convert from getting better at using more recyclable just products and items in general?
Yeah, awesome question. And this is kind of the point of the podcast, is we're trying to do as much as possible in Freedom Packaging to move people away from single-use plastics. So typically a single-use plastic is when you're mixing two different types of plastic together via lamination or something like that. And then once you have polyester and polyethylene mixed together, polypropylene and polyethylene mixed together, you can't recycle that. The melt points are different. You can't separate them. That's just going into the landfill. So our big mission at Freedom Packaging has been looking at all these people's structures and see if we can move them from a PET or polyester polyethylene mix into pure polyethylene. So there's been a lot of development in polyethylene about how do we make that replace the polyester. And then it's a pure polyethylene structure. So we do machine direction orienting, where we stretch it really far in one direction, the machine direction, obviously, and that creates more heat resistance, makes it act more like polyester. And then we're swapping out polyester with that MDO polyethylene. That helps a ton, and we can use that in recyclable steam, as long as there's no fats and oils. And we're going to have a completely different podcast just on the dangers of recyclable steam, because that is a deep dive. And maybe we'll do that one next, I don't know. And then also just looking at moving people into surface print. If we're not steaming or boiling bag or retort, can we just go into surface print, which is just pure polyethylene? A lot of people have concerns about that, because it's like, well, I can't run polyethylene as fast as I could run a laminated structure. So as opposed to 60 bags per minute on my bagging line, now I'm only getting 45. And if you talk to any co-packer, throughput is their biggest metric. Like, how many bags, how many pounds of food am I pumping out in an hour? That's how they gauge their success. So by switching to a recyclable structure, the big concern is now I'm running slow. What would have taken me, a day and a half to pack this out for Aldi's is now taking 2 days or 2.5 days. That's a lot more labor. That's a lot more time. That builds into packaging costs. And you can kind of think about all packaging out there is like a third. So let's say it's a 12-ounce bag of broccoli, right? A third of the cost in that is the food. A third of the cost is the packaging. And a third of the cost is the labor and the skills to get it into the bag.
Yeah.
Right? So that's where they want to reduce that labor cost. And then another thing they're concerned about moving recyclable is my packaging cost going up, right? So if you're running slower and recyclable packaging is more expensive, then you're getting two of the 3 cost factors, and building that out and getting it to the retailer have gone up. However, surface print is usually more cost effective than laminated, because you're taking that lamination step out of the production. We're just extruding the polyethylene, we're printing it, we're putting a varnish on top so it'll get through your seals, and then we're slitting, sending roll stock out for vertical form film and seal machines. So that's great. But again, anytime, what I'm trying to say is that we're engineering polyethylene on the surface print side to run just as fast as if it was a laminated structure. And we're also have some pretty cool blends that have a little bit more density to them, and they'll actually stand up. So you could do a double tuck gusseted bag that's pure surface print, and it'll stand up in the store and present well. Most people think, oh, I'm doing pure poly, it's all soft, and so if I tried to do a stand-up bag, it would, just fold over and need some packaging Viagra, let's say. But
Nice and firm on the shelf.
we have an SUP version of surface print, so double tuck gusset for like potatoes and stuff like that. Stains up great.
Yeah.
And again, our run speeds are not suffering at all. And from an energy standpoint, a pure poly bag actually seals at lower temperature than polyester, because polyester, you can fire heat at it. And a lot of operators do because it just makes their job easier. It's like, hey, if I'm hitting it with 360 degrees Fahrenheit, I'm just banging them out and I'm not burning bags. This is awesome. If you hit polyethylene with 360 degrees, you're going to start burning through the bags. So we actually start at like 250 and we don't go over 300. So it would be interesting to do a study if you're running pure poly. What's your energy draw at that point? You know, especially with energy prices going up. If you're running at lower temperatures across 6 bagging lines and you were running at 350 or 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and now you're running at 260, what does that look like?
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's
Yeah,
gotta be better.
huge. Yeah, right. And that's kind of like a huge way to, I mean, you're obviously trying to save money in the long run. And that's kind of the idea of this, but also save the planet. So it's like a win-win situation, it sounds like. You know, like, why wouldn't you do this? And that's kind of what, you know, whenever I first got brought on here with this company and you were telling me about all of this stuff and, you know, the direction that you wanted to go to, I believed in you and I will always believe in you. And that's kind of the idea, is that you were trying to take it to where we can save the planet and save money in a lot of things. And what you just explained was a win-win.
Yeah.
It sounds like.
Yeah, and especially, again, if it's a polyester to polyethylene and we're eliminating that lamination step, we've had customers that have actually saved 10 to 15% on their packaging by moving into a recyclable structure
So
without any decrease in throughput. So that's why when I'm not here just filming this podcast all day, I'm usually on the road on different plants doing trials to teach them how do you get into recycling and how can you do it in a way that you actually are break even, saving money, or even if there's a slight increase in packaging costs, can we offset that because of your energy costs going down because you're running at lower temperatures? So you really have to take a holistic view of it, right? If you're just looking at like with narrow in the vacuum, this is my packaging cost and now it's gone here, that stinks. But again, if we can keep your labor costs the same because your throughput is the same and then your packaging cost goes up 5%, but your energy costs offset that, then you're probably break even. And again, with the same exact packaging, you're putting it into the stream. So with the brands creating packaging that can be recycled as opposed to single-use plastic, and then educating the consumers on making sure that plastic gets back into the stream, we're doing some good things.
Yeah, and I think that's another good point too, is educating the consumer, you know, educating, you know, anyone really, just trying to help them understand, you know. I know everyone kind of thinks it's more like on the salesy side, but at the end of the day, we're really trying to help people. I mean, that's what the end goal is. So yeah, that was good. I thank you for answering that question. That was something that was definitely come to the top of the head, and yeah, that's great. So yeah, was there any other points that you wanted to hit on that?
No, I'm sure everybody is bored to death already, so maybe we wrap up the first one. That was a lot of chemistry, and that's kind of what it's going to be, but we're trying to take advanced chemistry and boil it down so that the common end user who doesn't have a background in packaging or engineering can understand this stuff. If you have questions, you know, our contact information is going to be all over the podcast. Absolutely. We're certainly accessible. We're not famous yet. So I don't have a handler yet. I don't have a rider. I'm working on those two things. Only espresso and only green M&Ms in my trailer, please, from now on.
Yep, the green M&Ms are the tip top right there. Those are amazing. But yeah, I think that what you just said hits home. We want the comments, you know, we want the questions. We want to be able to communicate with you. We want to be able to educate you. If you have questions, don't hesitate. That's exactly why we're here. This is exactly why we're doing this. Again, we're just trying to get out in front of as many faces as possible so we can try and help as many people as well. And again, at the end of the day, helping the planet. So that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, give us your feedback. Did we do great? Did we do bad?
Yeah, please give us a thumbs up, right? And so that kind of just comes down to the conclusion. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. This was the first of many, and we are so excited to be here. Tom, thank you so much for creating this atmosphere and creating this dream, letting this dream become fruition. This is amazing. I'm so excited, and I couldn't ask for a better partner to do this with. I mean, you asked me actually, so just so FYI, if anyone's knowing out there, he asked me. So
fair enough.
Just kidding. But for the most part, yes, thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to all the episodes that we do together. So
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, just for my son Deacon, who actually went scuba diving yesterday at Monterey Bay Aquarium for the first time, which I'm so proud of him for doing
Absolutely,
that.
that is such a nice thing.
All of his ridiculous things that he watches, I hear at the end, whether they say smash the like button,
Yep.
hit the subscribe
Hit
button.
the subscribe, comment, do all the above of what just
Yeah,
said.
do those things. I heard that once, so I think we should say it.
I think that's
ours,
killer.
too.
That makes you a good dad right there. But I'm Jeff Evans, and I'm signing off.
I'm Tom Hallenstein, and I'm out too.